Hello again, everybody. I thought I'd do something a little different today. These are photos that I took in 2013 of the old U.S. Pipe and Wheland Foundry property in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And yes, I did get permission to go on this property. It's way too big and dangerous to go in on your own without permission. Not to mention the fact that they are actually renting out space to other companies. So it's locked up and everything's secure, but let's just go along and take a look at a lot of these wonderful photos and just see what time's left behind. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you again here in a minute. One thing I found interesting is that they had two bathhouses. One was for the salaried workers, and the other one was for the regular workers. I found it interesting that they separated it. I guess the salaried workers, it was a little bit more of a perk, and they got their more private area. Another thing that happened was some of these photos I've taken with flash, some I've taken without flash. And it just shows how dark and creepy it can be without the lighting in some of these buildings. Still, they're pretty impressive. By the way, if anybody that's watching this recognizes any of these locations or used to work here, chime in on your stories in the comments below. This place, I'm sure, has so many stories that it could tell, and it's just a shame that it may just fade into the background. People did work here until 2006, so I wonder what was still being used at that point. Now this is the building that's supposed to be the oldest on property. This is also where the maintenance shed was, and where all of those very powerful blowers were to move air around. It's interesting to see some more high-tech equipment right alongside these giant old school pieces of equipment, and to see the names on the lockers and all the labels. Everything just has a story to tell. It's really interesting. It's interesting to see things like the perfect attendance record, and then later on see a sheet that was all of the people that were being let go. So it's just things fading away. I was told by a few people that back in the day, these rooms were so clean you could just about eat off the floor. So you can really see what time has done to these locations. That and people trying to strip copper out of things. Makes me wonder how much of the old power boxes were still being used, or if they were able to switch over to the newer high tech equipment and this stuff just sat against the walls because it was just easier to leave it. The photos are very misleading. This entire complex is truly gigantic, and a lot of these buildings are truly massive. Those are, I don't know, 15-foot tall piles of the molding sand that was used when they poured the metal in the molds to make the pipes and the fire hydrants and the brake pads and whatnot. Gives you a sense of how truly massive these buildings are. The round building is what was considered the, I guess, the lube room. It's where they stored grease and lubrication and oils and whatnot for all the equipment. But we'll get to see that here in a moment. It's really got an interesting look all to itself. Well, this is the inside of the lubrication room. This is an interesting hand-operated crane. I guess it was there to pick up big drums of grease or lubrication stuff. And interestingly enough, you can still smell it the second you walk into this building. And then there's little touches like the shelves where I guess the smaller cans would have gone. And then on the left side of the building, you even have piping for what looks like a radiator system, which makes sense. You would have wanted to have kept some of these oils and lubricants at a warmer operating temperature during the cold winter months, because it would have been a lot easier to apply warm than it would have been cold. And there's the radiator system, still intact after all these years. Interestingly enough, you have a hydrocollator made in Chattanooga, Tennessee from the Chattanooga Pharmaceutical Company. It's interesting to see a Chattanooga landmark using old Chattanooga equipment. Just the ghosts of the past. And this giant complex really isn't hidden. That right there is 24. So if you come in from Nashville, you actually pass right beside this giant property. Now, things have changed. Obviously, when this giant complex was in, it was more train based. Then they put the interstate in. But you can still see that old and new, a lot of it is still here. What I didn't get to record was to get up into the old attic where many thousands of square feet of these old wooden molds were stored. They're still up there, still under lock and key. Maybe one day I'll get back to take a look at this place. But until then, this is all I've got, and it still is a pretty amazing property. So much history, even though you can see that some of the old buildings are not here anymore, even if their ghosts are left behind. Well, guys, thanks for coming along on this journey. I'm sorry I couldn't take you there in person in video, but maybe one day in the future I'll be able to. Anyway, I am off to go on some more journeys. So until then, why don't you go on some journeys of your own? We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.